In this video, we are about to get hyped to paint the Aleph faction from Infinity the Game. Roll that in. Welcome to Corner K's. You're in the hobby corner. I'm your host, your sci-fi connoisseur, and your best friend, Deck. Y'all know that I'm painting my Aleph right now, and I wanted to share my inspiration with you guys. Ultimately, I didn't deviate too far from the box art, but I did make some slight changes. Well, in some cases not so slight, based on some of my inspirations. What are your inspirations when you're painting your Aleph? Share them in the comments below, or just leave us a robot emoji. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into it, I think I should be responsible and disclaimer that some of the artists I'm about to talk about do illustrations that are fan service to the male gaze. They may be objectification or can potentially support a negative body image. Know that our appreciation of the artworks on this channel are purely about the style, the design, illustration techniques, and methodology. But I do want to be respectful to all of you guys, so if you think that this is potentially harmful, then please dip now. Otherwise, if you're okay, then let's get stoked. Now, as a refresher, Aleph are the embodiment of the benevolent AI that kind of oversees, governs, supports the human sphere. There are two sectorials within Aleph. There are the OSS, Operations subsection, which is mostly robots and super robot looking at the lower end of the totem pole, I guess. And on the higher end of the structure are more humanoid looking things. And the other sectorial is Steel Phalanx, which is actual resurrected Greek heroes. Okay, so when I'm painting my Aleph, absolutely the first artist that comes to mind for me is Hajime Sorayama. Hajime Sorayama was, from my experience, super popular within the old school industrial design crowd. I think because of his airbrush method of illustration. Most of his work is like chromed women in provocative poses. I'm sharing on screen something that is less provocative. But you can see here that everything is just absolutely chromed to the maximum. He's an old school dude. He's old school techniques, actually airbrushing these illustrations since the early 80s. And I think that methodology actually makes it kind of relatable to miniature painting because we're still using physical paints. And achieving this type of look is challenging, but feasible. I'm showing on screen here a post-human that I just painted last week. On the box art, this is like a bluish gray, but I decided to just go full-blown chrome on these thigh highs, inspired by Sorayama. When you look at his work, you kind of get the feeling that you don't need to like really follow the rules of how the light is working, of how the material even works. So even though these thigh highs, if I am painting them in a chrome, would imply that they are a stiff material, I just decided to go full-blown T2 on it. I think it looks really great, so thank you, Sorayama. I think the more you look at his work, I think another thing that kind of makes it appropriate to the Aleph faction is, I think the word is Jetsonian, is like the concept of the future, but from the past, which makes that concept of the future kind of like outdated. So when you look at his stuff, it's like just the full-blown hyperchrome is super Jetsonian. And I think that actually is the essence of Aleph. It's a vision of the future from like 2011 or whenever Infinity started up. And it's going to be outdated soon if it's not already. So conceptually, I think it's pretty cool. On my Achilles here, I was thinking of chroming Achilles' face to really push that, but I kind of lacked a little bit of confidence. I didn't have enough practice doing the chrome effect to really feel confident doing that, and painting faces is already like really small, so kind of copped out, but I'm always thinking about it. That is Hajime Sorayama. If you ever wanted any example of how to chrome just a human body, there you have it, chromed the whole thing. Next artist on my list is Red Juice 99. So Red Juice did the visual development, like the character designs and a lot of the promotional artworks for the anime Guilty Crown circa 2011. So if you Google that anime, what you'll find is probably less than stellar reviews, but I ride super hard for the visual development. I think when most people look at the Infinity character designs, they'll think like Evangelion, like not only the mechs, but also like the pilot suits. And Red Juice 99 is that times like a million. I do think there are a couple things from Red Juice illustration style that can be taken into miniature painting, and I'll show you exactly what. So the first thing is Red Juice has this really specific shape language where they're illustrating basically what can only be described as daggers of color. So all the shapes are these like sharp, angular triangular shapes for absolutely everything. And I'll show you, I tried to bring this into my myrmidon here. If you look at the leg, in terms of like the thigh musculature, I kind of went daggery shaped on that. I thought that was kind of like a nice way to punch up that sci-fi shape language rather than doing like a soft blend and making it actually look like organic. I think doing that kind of like hard line definition of that musculature kind of supports. It's like a small thing, but you know, just to show that there are ideas that you can take from illustration and bring them into painting that don't necessarily mean you have to be a better painter. You just got to think of it, you know? So another thing that I think happens in sci-fi illustration, and Red Juice shows pretty well, is just like a big contrast in materials. If you just paint the normal Infinity box art style, everything is like roughly the same amount of glossy. There's like a pretty narrow spectrum of like matte to gloss because everything is just like a little bit glossy in Infinity. But I think by committing to the chrome, I'm actually able to get that contrast really high. So here's my Achilles again. If you look at his legs, I kind of did a separation between like the side armor panel of the leg and like the pant part. And so you kind of get like this flat and this chrome next to each other. That also kind of supports what I'm seeing in terms of not only Red Juice artwork, but Infinity artwork, where the color design is just super different. Like when you look at 40K, your color design, like let's say like ultramarines or tyranids, you're getting kind of like a 2-color story and then a pop color. So like ultramarines, it's like very distinctly blue first and then yellow in terms of proportion. And then either your bolter or your eyes are red or something, you know, but that's like a really, really small amount. And then tyranids is like purple first and then that like off-white bone color. And then if you have like a tertiary, like tiny color, like a little bit of red. But if you look at like Infinity, like you look at nomads, you're like looking at red and black and white, but red is actually red and dark red. There's like a tonal there. And the proportions between like the primary and the secondary are like really close in proportions. So it's like 40, 40, 20, or like 50, 40, 10 or something in terms of like color proportion. And Red Juice 99 is kind of doing the same thing here where it's like red, black, little bit of green, little bit of white. But red actually is red and dark red. So it's like a very different way to manage the color design. I think that shows pretty clearly in Red Juice artwork. And I think it's like congruent with what's going on in the Infinity language. So I'm kind of doing that in mine where I kind of like split hairs between like what's like white and then what's like chrome, trying to get like those to be kind of the same value, but they have different finishes. So really tough to communicate like at the miniature level, but that's where the chrome kind of helps. So, you know, Red Juice 99, love this illustration style, super, super angular. Looks like they've never made a thing in their lives because everything is just like. And the last artist on my list here is Shigenori Sojima. Fans of the Persona games will recognize his works. I specifically like the way Aegis is depicted in a lot of the artworks collected from Persona 3. What I like about this is the feeling of the design. You know, this is like an android-ish character, and the character is often depicted to look unfeeling, uncaring, kind of cold, or very limited in expression. And I think that's the kind of thing that makes Aleph scary. Is, you know, Aleph has a front that it's this benevolent AI, but some people don't trust that Aleph is really benevolent and is potentially just self-serving. So showing that side of Aleph, you know, if they're in some combat encounter, are the embodiments of Aleph still going to look friendly or are they going to look cold and unfeeling? And I think that right there is the thing that makes this scary as like basically an army, right? As fighters. So I think Shigenori Sojima is kind of like achieving this with the color design. So here's an artwork from a book that I have. And the color design is like really, really blue. So the character herself is not really showing expression or is showing very limited expression, but by using the color design is like really pushing that character away from anything relatable to the point where, you know, the character does look weaponized rather than human because of that really intense blue undershading. And so this is like the main difference I took from the box art to what I'm doing on my Aleph is I have a base of purple for all of my white. And by doing base purple, I'm like taking a lot of the warmth out. Angel Giraldez, when he painted like Achilles and his steel phalanx execution, he was using like a gray khaki base. So really warm, like yellowish white. And I think strictly speaking, that was probably a better contrast with the other colors within the line. By painting my Aleph with a purple base, I'm hoping what I'm achieving is like a more alien kind of look, a less human kind of look, because of that coldness that I'm getting from the purple. So those are my inspirations, the things that I look at and think about when I'm painting my Aleph. What do you guys think about and look at when you're painting your Aleph? Post your inspirations in the comments below. Hope you had fun. Please join the Facebook, join the Discord. Please like and subscribe. We are always desperate. Thank you to our patrons over on Patreon, and see you next time.
Only in death does subscribing end!